This is Static. When Gear and I aren't fighting bang babies, we like to listen to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You've just jumped inside the pull bag. Join TFG1 Mike and the rest of the comic crew here at the GCRN as they make their great escape into comics. From DC, Marvel, and Image to IDW, Boom Studios, and Zenescope, we have everything right here. We cover things like Transformers, He-Man, superheroes, TMNT, and Radiant Black. Yeah, we have all that and so much more. It's all inside the pull bag here on the Geekcast Radio Network. So, without further ado, it's time to talk about the comics we're reading right now, here inside the pull bag.
The name's Static. I put a shock to your system. Good line.
Hello and welcome to the pull bag. It is the beginning of June. It is hot as hell for some odd reason out here in the state of Washington, folks. It's a misconception that if you just fly into the state of Washington, it immediately turns cloudy and rains all the time. It is like 81 degrees and it... Anyway, I am, of course, TFG and Mike. This is the pull bag, episode 413.5. Joining me once again, he joined me in episode 409 for his Comic Origins episode. I have Mr. Donovan Morgan Grant. Hello, sir.
I put a shock to your system. Hello, thank you for having me back again.
No, yeah, you do. This didn't. Ladies and gentlemen, I really dug some of the new 52 stuff. And some of the other new 52 stuff I had not read until recently. And apparently there is, or was, back in 2012, some controversy with the title we're going to talk about tonight. And, wow.
You're really at a loss for words, aren't you?
I am one of those people that I'm reading this thing, so what we're talking about is Static Shock, Volume 1, Supercharged. Static Shock, the new 52 series, only got 8 issues, and then it got canceled. I didn't really know that until you sent me several different links and things, and one of the links you sent me was from one of the creators, or one of the writers, or quote writers, that was supposed to be writing this thing, and... I didn't know. I paid attention to a lot of the new 52 stuff, but my attention was Nightwing in Chicago. Lovely. I love that idea. Batgirl is a psychological comedy character, and she I loved all of that, but I wasn't anywhere near Static at the time when it released, so this is all brand new to me, and I'm I got 2 pages into this, and I'm like. This was before you sent me the link you sent me, and I'm like, this is Static? This doesn't feel like Static. I don't know, man. It just, lost for words is the best way to put it. Let me get the creative out of the way really quick, and then we can start discussing this.
Sure.
Writers include Scott McDaniel and John Rozum. I'm sorry, John. I'm not trying to mispronounce your last name, but and then apparently on parts 7 and 8, Mark Bernardin.
Right.
Scott McDaniel did the art. Andy Owens, Jonathan Glapion, LeBeau Underwood were the inkers. Guy Major was the colorist. Static, obviously created by Dwayne McDuffie, Cowan, Davis, and Dingle. Yeah, this is not a shock to my system. The shock to my system is how... I'm just going to come out here and say it, folks. I normally do not do this, but I don't know where to go with this, because right now, my feelings on this story... It's a straight 1 out of 5. I just, I don't know, as I'm going through it, I'm like, okay, he's more Static than he is Virgil. and he's, doing his hero thing, but he's in New York, not Dakota. Why the hell is he, like, this whole opening thing in the first issue, I'm like, why is he fighting villains in New York?
Well. Let's back up for a second, because I don't know. What is your familiarity with Static? Like what's either have
the
you seen
cartoon
show
series, yeah, the
Okay.
cartoon series, yes.
Cartoon series, gotcha.
Mainly the cartoon series. When Milestone started and when the character was created and all of that, I was not into comics at all. So my first exposure to him was the DC Animated Universe cartoon series with Phil Lamar voicing him, with Jason Marsden doing gear and all of that. So mainly it's the cartoon series. What about yours? Were you reading Milestone stuff when it came out?
No, I would have been too young. I don't even know I was aware of it. I know I wasn't aware of it. Yeah, no, I definitely watched the animated show all throughout its run. Especially in the last couple of seasons, it became a lot more heavily integrated into the DC Animated Universe, which they paid in kind, because Dwayne McDuffie ended up writing a ton of Justice League Unlimited, and Static appeared in there. I read this initially when it came out. I'm pretty sure I read every issue. I know I collected the first few episodes, but I read it until it ended, which wasn't very long. And a couple of years ago, I did track down and read every issue of the original Milestone series. So I do, in 2021, have a much stronger grasp on Static as a character and its comic book history than I did when this first came out, and then I did when I first watched the cartoon.
Right, okay. Yeah, I'm basing everything, for me, of the character off of what appearances he had, not only in his own series, but, as you said, JLU,
And he also appeared in the Teen Titans like right before the New 52 as well.
Yeah. I don't. It just doesn't. It's like certain writers, no matter who they are, they pick one side of the character's coin and they go with that, and they forget about, like, let's face it, Bruce Wayne is the mask, Batman is the man. But sometimes people look at that and be like, oh, I'm going to write it as it's all Bruce or all Batman or all, like, the whole point of a dual identity is to write about both sides of the identity.
Mm-hmm.
And this to me just feels like it's the Static show, and the moments that Virgil gets, it doesn't feel like the character I know him to be.
Well, I'm with you halfway on that. What's the disconnect? Like, what contradicts your familiarity in terms of like his character?
The disconnect is, and I don't remember off the top of my head, and I'm not going to sit here and try to type and look it up, whatever. In the cartoon series, was his mom alive or dead?
His mom was dead in the show, but that did contradict the comic where she was alive. And
okay, so she was alive in the original comic. Okay.
Yeah.
For me, the disconnect is all the family stuff and having the two Sharons. And I'm like,
that was always a problem.
I'm like, wait a minute, why are there two, like, there isn't even, like, an explanation, I don't think, in this entire opening of why there are two Sharons. Like, there's no line of dialogue, there's no nothing. There are two Sharons, and this is the imposter. No, she's the imposter. No, this, no that. It's mainly the fact that Virgil doesn't they try to put the family life into this, but it falls flat for me.
I remember reading this and feeling, because like when Static reappeared, for the first time in many years in Teen Titans, that was when Dwayne McDuffie twisted or when Dan DiDio twisted Dwayne McDuffie's arm to have the Milestone characters appear in DC, basically for the reason of Static. Like he was kind of brainwashed, and the Titans saved him, and he was returning to Dakota. So there was a sense of something's missed in between the pages. But this whole, like his older sister Sharon in issue 1 throughout the entire series is cloned. So there's two Sharons, neither knows which one's the real one. It's basically the clone saga. Yeah. And right away, that leads to the bigger problem of not reintroducing people because I think that like the idea is that like they're targeting people who are only familiar with the cartoon. while also playing it fast and loose. Like later on, they do reestablish his milestone continuity, specifically in issue 8, like the last issue. Like they retell his origin story, but it's like I feel that like issue 8, where he's talking to the psychiatrist and you see his origin story, should have been the very first issue.
Yeah, it should have been.
Because you get like his origin story, like the Big Bang, and like his original costume. You get his they actually count his appearances in Teen Titans and stuff, and like in here it's very confusing because we're like in media res with like the sister, and also they're in New York now. Oh, he's at this internship. Oh, and how old is he again? Like it's really 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 like in the middle of things, and you're right. Like it's much of it is static and not Virgil, and I can say, having read the Milestone series, that is not the case. It was very much a Spider-Man thing where like he was Virgil first, and his like his costume life was a complication for him, not the other way around.
Yeah, and that would have played better here.
Mm-hmm.
I really think it would have been played better here if they were using Virgil as the main character with Static sort of being the sidekick character. And the only reason why I say that is because as of this recording, I saw a image that Tom Taylor shared on Facebook. Comic book author Tom Taylor, for those that don't know. If you don't know, I don't know what rock you're living under. Anyway, apparently, as of this recording, June 1st, 2021. God, for some odd reason, I almost said 2017. I don't know why. Apparently, everyone is going around Twitter giving controversial Batman opinions, and Tom's opinion is...
Oh, yeah.
I just shared it, so if you went to my profile, it should be the very first post you see. It's got Nightwing in the foreground and Batman and everybody else in the background, and it says Nightwing. Batman is Nightwing's best sidekick.
Yeah, I saw that.
Kind of thing. So it's like, this feels like Static is the hero and Virgil is just the afterthought. And I hate when you do characters like that because, like you said, it's the Spider-Man thing. The person, it isn't like Shazam where it's a kid in an adult's body. It isn't like what's another hero that has one identity but has a completely different identity?
Tim Drake Robin.
Yeah. I mean, it just, it feels like they were trying to do something. And it actually reminds me of, and I think this happened in the New 52, when they did the Batman Superman title. The very first issue of the Batman Superman title for New 52, there were 4 characters. There was 2 Batman and 2 Superman, because one of the duos was from a different universe or something. That's what this kind of felt like to me. Like, this whole clone thing, and I'm like, really? Really, DC, you have to do a clone? Well, I mean, the clone thing in this was Sharon. Like, really, DC, you have to do a clone? Really? And why does it have to be his older sister? Like,
I don't think that they can. Well, I mean, like, do we want to get into, like, why this was what it was?
Sure.
And I honestly found this out today, but like, this series was initially like the credited writer is John Rossum. John Rossum was a Milestone writer. He, I believe, created the character Zombie. He wrote in Cobalt, and he's written Static before. Like, he had Static guest star in the Cobalt title. And also he was a friend of Dwayne McDuffie. Like, they worked together. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what he was doing for DC, if he worked at DC before this, but like, he was a perfectly suitable writer to choose for this. But he writes on his blog, or he wrote on his blog about 10 years ago, that Scott McDaniel was the artist. Scott McDaniel, he of like Nightwing fame, and he had this editor. It was like Harvey Richards,
yep.
And according to John Rossum, he was essentially railroaded. His ideas for the book were overtaken by Richards' ideas and McDaniel's ideas. They were the ones who had the idea to move him from Dakota to New York. They had the ones to have Sharon have this clone, and pretty much they were also the ones to keep it mainly a superhero book first and a Virgil Hawkins book, like basically not at all. And Rosen's very upfront. He's like, listen, like, I contribute some of the dialogue, and I'm not free of criticism if you didn't like this element or this element that were my ideas. That's fine. But like much of the bulk of what I felt was wrong with this book, a lot of people didn't like this book, was not my idea. It comes from McDaniel and Richards. And I mean, I never explicitly knew that, but I remember back in the day, it was very obvious, very, very obvious, especially when this book ended at 8 issues, that there was a real lack of attention being paid to the Static book.
Yeah.
Just because like it wasn't, you can kind of tell between like, the writer and the artist how coherent the scripts are, and it wasn't like wholly coherent. I mean, I think Scott McDaniel's a better storyteller than this book shows you, because like it's really hard to go from panel to panel and know every single time what's going on, and the plots are very like convoluted. No, it's not convoluted. It's too crowded. They're introducing a lot of gang characters, a lot of new villains. They have all these secret agendas. They're watching Static. We have to get used to the fact that Static's supporting cast is not here. There's none of his high school friends, or even his other superhero friends. Like we don't see Rocket or any of the other like milestone heroes. So it's Static in a new setting, but they're not treating it as though he's new. They're treating it as though he's always kind of been here, even though he says, I've just moved here. And so it's a real like cognitive dissonance between what they want to present and what they want to introduce new readers with, because it's straight up, it's not as though Static has been around for years in comic books like Superman or Batman. They ought to have reintroduced him properly, because he was a guest in Titans. He had his own title. And between, the differences between the comic book series and the cartoon series, I don't know what they thought they were doing, because it's just not a very clean reintroduction to him.
Yeah, no, it isn't at all. And this whole gang element part of the story, and I'm like, really? That's where, like, Gangs of New York kind of, and again, I would much prefer him going up against Bang Babies than Gangs of New York. The one scene in here, you look just like the Joker, and the pale face basically just punches the guy before he can finish saying that he looks just like the Joker. And I'm like, huh? Okay. Were they really grasping at, this is Static. You should not have to grasp at straws and make bad Batman puns or references to Batman characters in Static's comic. His world is richer than being relegated to a Joker joke.
Also, they're like, let's just let Hawkman or Captain Atom do this. And it's like, so I guess that those characters are also in New York, but like that also feels weird, because Static, he's a DC character now, but I mean, he was a milestone character initially. So hearing like DC heroes in tandem with him, it is really, really disconcerting, because they're not establishing that. They're just dropping that in without any context.
Yeah, and that's not good. It's not good writing. It's not good storytelling. The art is okay.
It's not McDaniel's best.
Yeah, and this is honestly, truth be told, because I haven't read a lot of his stuff, this is actually the first time we're covering Scott McDaniel on this podcast. I have not read any of his Nightwing stuff. I'm hoping his Nightwing stuff is better, because Nightwing is my number one. You fuck with Nightwing? Oh, boy.
No. It's his best work as Nightwing.
Okay, well, that's good. But, like you said, close to the end, like issue 7 and 8, they changed the costume, the original costume. The new 52 costume is just, honestly, it's boring.
It's too much of a superhero suit. I like Static's clothes, particularly. I do like his cartoon, his animated looks the best, because I like the idea of like taking clothes and making a superhero costume from them rather than straight up spandex.
Yeah. Not everybody can be Spider-Man. Not everybody can be Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, whatever. Like, And not every kid character, and like you said, what are we like? He has this internship to some school or something, so we're assuming he's in either college or like. I honestly don't know how old he is. Like, did they even say in this how old he's supposed to be?
They say, well, it's inconsistent because like they say that he is 16, in this title, but they also say like the Big Bang was a few years ago, but when he got his powers, he was 15. So it's like how old are you writing him? Like he mentions not being able to drive yet. Like it's. Because again, and I'm trying, you don't want to just hold something to the standard of something else. But in the Milestone series, he was very much a kid. I mean, he was 15 years old. He was dealing with kid problems. There were like gang influences. He was having problems with the girls and stuff. But it was very much like an immature, juvenile. Yeah. Not even Spider-Man. He was a young kid. And here, he looks like he's like 18, like visually, and that's a problem with the artwork. But it is say 16 in this.
Yeah, they do, because he makes a big deal about getting a car or something or other, and his dad's like, New York has the best public transportation system in the world. Mm-hmm. Sure it does. I'm trying my best not, because I'm from Boston, folks, so New York and I don't I respect it, but I don't have to like it. But it's one of those things where I tried my best to not let John's words of what happened behind the scenes cloud my judgment of what this book is. At the same time, how could I not click that link? Like in the middle of reading this, I'm like, how can I not just be curious? And like, I couldn't just go back to it. I'm like, oh, I need to find out what happened.
It's like, why I quit Static.
Yeah, it's like, why I quit Static. And I'm like, uh-oh. Right. They're in trouble. Mm-hmm. And it just... The art is... I'm very much a modern, and don't get me wrong, this is modern. It's not classic art or anything like that. It's, this is the new 52. This is 2011, 2012, around that time. Like you said, almost 10, 11 years ago. Oh, God, has it really been almost 11 years since?
Yeah. It'll be 10 years this August.
Oh, my God. Wow. That's crazy. But this art, I like the colors and I like the flashes. Like I'm kind of cycling through the book as we're talking about it. There's a scene in the middle of it, I forget which issue, but where Static is like, "Don't touch me. None of you look like you wash your hands after doing your business." Well, first of all, I'm sorry. For me, I want to be able to hear Phil Lamar's Static voice in my head, and I cannot hear young Static, Phil Lamar in my head saying those lines. That's some bad writing. But what I like about my point in bringing this scene up is I like the glowy aspect of his powers. I like the brightness of the colors of it. But the rest of the art, unless it's him using his powers, it's too dark. The colors are just uninspiring is the best way I can put it, I guess.
Well, he always operates at night in this title, which is an interesting choice. Because in the show and also the original series, it didn't really matter. Where here, it's like he's a nighttime hero, and I guess it's because of school and stuff. But again, we don't see him at school.
No, we don't see him at school at all. If we do, it's like a half of a scene to just set it up that he is there, like they are in New York because he has this internship. But the rest of it is, And I love how they're like, Static has no civilian identity. Computer behind the lady. Hawkins, Virgil, Static.
Well, that was almost funny because the joke, because they comment on that issue one that that was always when he was younger, he had a different haircut. But at the same time, if they cannot tell the difference between somebody with a different haircut with two different pictures, that's a really crappy system they're working. I will say this. I remember this not being very good, and I read some of this recently. I was doing some articles for DC about Static, and I revisited some of this. I will say this was better than I remembered it being. And now this was never good, but like I did hear Phil Lamar is some of the quips, because Static is like always quipping whenever he's going up against the villains. I think the issue is that like it's just a very, very busy script. There's like word balloons on word balloons on word balloons. There's not a lot of times where the characters like just reacts.
Yeah. And
it's just so much information and all this kind of stuff. I think I like how, and this is always a thing. This is always something that Dwayne McDuffie really put across. That like he's not just an electric hero. He is an electromagnetic hero who can use his powers in different ways. I like half the time when people shoot at him, like he doesn't even have to try. They just reflect off of him, and he uses a lot of like unexpected ways to use his abilities. He's very intelligent that way. And you're right. I think the colors are really well applied. And that is good. But it's also, again, it's fighting against an incredibly crowded script with characters that are frankly not that interesting in terms of the bad guys.
The bad guys, I don't even care. There are no stakes here. I think it's close to the end of this, maybe. At some point or another, we see a villain that kind of looks like... what was his name in the show? What was Adam's name? What was Adam's superhero? Was it Rebound or
Rubber Band Man?
Rubber Band. Yeah, sorry, I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah,
he is referenced in this.
Yeah, like I saw that and I'm like, is that really Rubber Band Man? Because if it's Rubber Band Man, then that would make this a little bit better than what it actually. It wasn't Rubber Band Man.
Rubber Band.
And it like. I generally tend not to review things that I don't like, but I was already halfway into this when I realized, when you sent me this stuff, and I'm like, well, I guess I should finish this anyway, just because I've already started it, and I actually have a question on the pull bag, on the on the Origins thing. Are there comics you wish you had never read? And I'm sorry to say, this is one that I wish I had never read.
Damn.
Because
you really hated this.
I don't hate it. I just feel.
Are you sure?
Like it's not outright hatred. It's just not. Like you've already said, there's way too much script. There's a good and a bad way to do comics, usually, most of the time. Mm-hmm. And the good way to do comics is to have the script and the art complement each other. As you already said, there are way too many word balloons. There's way too much script here. And not enough. And it's because of the way that McDaniel, and I'm just going to blame McDaniel more than John, because John was only actually on the first 4 out of the 8 issues, and then he obviously quit. So when we get to issues 5 to 8, it's like, man, they're talking a lot. Like usually for me, a good comic, like I said a second ago, the writing and the art complement each other, and they work together in a way of, like, if you're going to have Static do some sort of hero thing, like if you're going to have the bad guy holding a girl above, high above on the Empire State Building or whatever, and you're going to have Static come in. On one panel you have the bad guy threatening the girl or the guy or whoever it is, and then the very next panel you have Static come in and hit him with something, whether it's an electric burst, whether it's a whatever. You have that punch and roll. This just rolls on and on and on with the writing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, it just.
I mean, I think that, like, I honestly feel that, like, Scott McDaniel was the wrong artist for this. Mm-hmm. I don't think that he's like the worst artist for this. It's not. I will say this. There's a lot of classic artists on set. There are like Dennis Cowan, John Paul Leon, who just recently lost. I think that the general art wasn't very good in the original title. It's very muddy. It's kind of hard to see sometimes, just because that was kind of the style they were kind of going for in Milestone often back in the time. Mm-hmm. But this is 2011. This is a different era. So I think that, like, I'm trying to think of other artists they could get, but at the same time, it's also in line with a lot of the New 52 artwork anyway, because they were having guys like Daniel Simpieri, and you had like what's his name on Snyder's Batman run. Like it was kind of like Greg Capullo. You had I'm thinking of the artwork from like Red Hood and the Outlaws. It was kind of a harder edged art style, generally speaking. I mean, because that's how they're doing DC back then. Everything was, not really clean, not really meant to be enjoyed. So I feel that with here, it's, it's not. This isn't made for kids. Like, oh, Static Shock, I remember that. Let me read this comic book. It's very confused. I do think, and I felt this way 10 years ago, they just did not invest enough energy. I get the sense that they thought this book would sell itself because it's Static's name. No, they didn't put enough effort into ensuring that.
Yeah, no, they most definitely did not. And again, I think even 10 years ago when the New 52 started, most people... I was 31. Oh, God, I was 31 back then. Oh, God, I'm so old. But most people that hear, at least in my personal opinion, yes, I know most everyone knew about Milestone or knew about the origins of Static, but most people that knew the character are coming, I would think, most everyday people, not just comic people, are coming from having seen the animated series. And... what the fuck is Static doing in New York? This is not Dakota. There's no Rubber Band Man. There's no this. There's no what was it? Oh God, you can fill in the blank. Thank you.
Aqua Maria. Hot Streak.
Hot Streak. Yep. There's none of that here. There's lame ass gang member characters as like if Static is supposed to be a superhero, then this ain't the superhero title that was meant for him. This is just, we're just going to put him in here and have him go up against all these no-names. Oh, it hurts me to say this. I love the character. I just don't love him in this.
Well, I'd like to know, and we can kind of, play armchair writer, loath as we should be to do that. Like, what would you have done? It's okay, we're launching Static for the New 52. What's an idea to launch this title? What would you have done?
What I would have done is... yeah,
I'm just curious.
Is that if you're going to introduce him to a whole new audience, regardless of what any, us... and I've only been into comics full time since I started the podcast 8 years ago, but I've known comics all my life. But us comic book fans that have been in it for 20, 30, 40, however many years you've been into comics, even though everyone's like, oh, and even I do this, oh, another Batman origin story, how many different angles can you show her pearls falling before we get it? They died. They got killed. I get it. Nobody, and I'm one of the first, another origin story. This needed to start with Static's origin. We needed to
it's not as ubiquitous as Spider-Man's or Superman's.
Yeah, no, it's not at all. We needed to see what happened. You look at, I forget the episode title, but the Parasite episode in Superman the Animated Series, how Parasite is born,
right,
kind of thing. You look at that and you're like, okay, we need to see, or hell, even yes, this is going to be bad, I know, and people are going to groan, but I don't care. You look at the awesomeness that is 2003 Daredevil, the theatrical cut, not that director's cut crap. Not that it's crap. But
oh really?
You look at the theatrical cut of... no, I don't think the director's cut of that is crap. It's just they just wanted to add more Dangerous Minds into there. You look at the theatrical cut of Daredevil. We see him running through the docks. We see the thing go across... the toxic waste thing. We see the toxic that's what this needed. We needed to see how Virgil Hawkins became Static. We needed to. Okay, if I have 8 issues, the first issue is going to be where he comes from, what he's doing there, what kind of kid he is. At the end of the first issue is when I would have him get his powers. And you would leave on that cliffhanger like, oh no, what has happened to Virgil Hawkins? Is he going to cling to the next issue or something? I don't know, some weird Static joke. Whatever. The second issue would be him learning how to use his powers. Mm-hmm. Third, fourth, and fifth would be him discovering there are other Bang babies. That's when but by the 5th issue is when you should be bringing Yvonne in, kind of thing. And then 6, 7, and 8 would be like some big battle for, and it should be set in Dakota. It should not be set in New York.
Yep.
Nobody wants to have Static in Metropolis. I'm sorry, nobody wants to.
Well, it's funny because like the original series, if you think back, well, again, I hope I'm not coming off as snobbish, but like both the cartoon and the original Milestone series, they both start off with like Static doing his thing, and then they flash back to his origin story.
And that's fine. You can do it as a flashback. That's fine. But the origin story for me, if I was writing this 8-issue series, we would need to learn his origin and even leave his origin as a cliffhanger at the end, at the first issue. Like I don't want to wait a month because this was monthly. I don't want to wait a month to find out his origin. Like you can start with the whole, like how TV does now, where it's a pre-credit scene. You can start with that. You can have him fighting people, and you could have him say something cool like, "Oh, by the way, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, however many years, say he's 15. So let's say a year ago, like let's just say he's been doing this for a year. So at 14 is when the Big Bang happened. At 15, he's been doing it for a year, but he's like something in that first battle, whatever that first battle is, something in that triggers his memory, and that's when we get the flashback of how he actually got the powers, and we learn that part of the story. Mm-hmm. Don't put him in a city that he doesn't belong in. Don't just make him go up against gang members that look like other DC villains.
And I also think that it's kind of crap generally because Hardware is in this book, and if you don't know who Hardware is, he was one of the main tentpole characters of Milestone, because Milestone began with, it was Icon and Rocket, Hardware, Static, and the Blood Syndicate, and Hardware is essentially like Milestone's Iron Man. Yeah, I would rather Static be surrounded by Milestone characters than just like, oh, the Justice League. Oh man, Superman doesn't have this problem. It's like, where's his world? Because if he's in Dakota, I want him to kind of at least be. I'm not saying he can't be the DC universe, but not just those guys. Because why is it only Static? I know he had a cartoon and stuff. Yeah. But it feels almost like affirmative action, where it's like, oh, we have Static, but we're not going to introduce these other heroes in the same way that we introduced Static through the cartoon series. It's like because these other characters are great, and it, again, like Hardware cameos throughout this title, but like again, it doesn't feel like an honest reintroduction of this character. It's just like, okay, well, it's Static, the kids will love him. Yeah, and no, sorry about your luck, but no, Hardware's here, but I think Hardware is here in name only. They turned Hardware into Jarvis. Essentially, he's there, but it's weird that and I think in issue 6 or something, he and Technique just show up to help, and it's like, I would almost think that this is a backdoor pilot to his own stuff, just how frequent he is. Yeah. But it's like, let's not give people the impression that Hardware is a Static supporting character. Like that's wrong. It would be like saying that Spider-Man's an Iron Man supporting character. Yeah, and he's not. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, Hardware was his own character and had his own story, just as Static has his own story. But in this, it feels like they just felt like, oh, we can just turn him into Jarvis. And it doesn't play right, and
I'll say this right now. Issue 8 is my favorite issue out of all of this.
Yeah, mine too.
Not because, the old joke of how, what was the best thing about this movie? It ended. No, it's not even that. It's more so issue 7 and 8 are my favorite because it actually feels like Static. The first 6 issues feel like Static is in some other world. It's like you have to have the character be affected by things, and this is going back to the point of what, his supporting cast is not here. I mean, yes, his family is here, but there's only so many times you can kidnap his clone sister. But at the same time, it's good that they focus at the end of this kind of on the whole family aspect of it all, because let's face it, he's a 15, 16-year-old kid who needs and wants his family. And I find that if you focus on that, it's like we actually started the pullback this year with covering Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray's takeover of Batwing from the New 52. You look at Batwing Volume 4 and 5, and you guys can go back to episode 393 and 394 to hear I think my friends Edward and Kendra Hale and I, in total, I think we talked about Batwing for about 5 hours between 2 podcasts. But Luke Fox, all of that Batwing run was centered around his family and how he would protect them. And I think with Static, you need to have him in it. Like, DC should not just be New York, Metropolis, Gotham, New Jersey, Coast City, Central City. Like, Dakota can be, like, just because Static is a milestone character, just because Dakota is a milestone city, that doesn't mean anything. They brought Batman Beyond into the New 52. They found a way to get Batman Beyond from the future back to the New 52. You can put Dakota and have Static in Dakota doing his own thing, and then every once in a while, maybe if you're doing an event title or something, you could have him go to Gotham to team up with Batman or something. You don't have to put every kid superhero in New York.
Well, also, I mean, like, why not have Dakota in the same place as Metropolis or Gotham? Because that's the city where he is. And that's the joke. It's not North or South Dakota. It's just Dakota. It's a fictional place for him to live in.
Yeah, it's like, Central City, I know, is not Central City is a fictional city. Coast City is a fictional city. Star City is a fictional city.
Keystone City, yeah.
All of these cities are fictional cities where they have heroes that don't
Gateway
have to
City,
be that don't have to be Metropolis or Gotham or actual real cities like New York or New Jersey or whatever. Like, I know the allegory has always been Metropolis is New York and Gotham is New Jersey, and that's fine, but they're also their own cities. They're not stand-ins for the real thing. And I just think putting him in New York is just a bad, like...
Well, also, it doesn't really matter that it's New York, because it's not like any of the New York's like landmarks play a part in the role. It's not like New York has a character that affects Stack in any way. It really doesn't matter that his family doesn't harm him, other than just, it's a recognizably black place, and they don't really specify it more than that even. So it's like he could have lived anywhere.
Yeah, he could have. Yeah, I think the two main things that they reference in this to tell you, besides the fact they say it's New York at one point or another, they reference Harlem, like you said, is where they're living, and he takes the one girl up to the spire of the Empire State Building. Other than that, it could be any city in the United States, or hell, any city in Europe. You just have to change the building styles for Europe, obviously. And I don't know, as I'm kind of like just looking through this again, like you said, the psychologist thing or the doctor thing at the end here, that is some of the best stuff because it's Virgil. It's not Static.
It's also easy to understand.
And, she specifically says here, I'm going to read this. People like me are trained to look for certain things when dealing with atypical students chronic lateness, social isolation, strong grades, frequent bruising. Any more than 3 usually point to either gang activity or child abuse. Like, I'm not saying I wanted Static to be in, a psychologist's office throughout this entire thing, but this scene rings true and rings real more to me than anything else that's in this book. Because it's Virgil. It's not Static. And I don't have anything against his Static persona. I just feel that there's no balance here between the two personalities.
After I read these 8 issues today, I went back and read a 3-parter from the original Static run. Mm-hmm. It was called like Louder Than a Bomb or something like that. And this is like 1993, right? So right. This is a very particularly intense time in America, as well as just in high schools and stuff, because what's going on in that storyline is that there are race riots between Jewish synagogues and radical black activists. Right. And there's one guy who's threatening a lot of Dakota areas, and he's making his threats on cable television and stuff. And so he's somebody that Static has to stop. But this spurs a conversation between Static and his friends. He talks to quote unquote Richie and Frida, who's Jewish, and you learn that both Frida and Virgil have their taught prejudices. Like Virgil believes that Jews control like the banks and all that kind of stuff, and Frida is saying, well, black people have this sort of advantage in sports and stuff, and they make a lot of money, and this is something that these are prejudices that they have to work throughout the 3-part story, while right. Static has to track down this character. And it ends with the parents simultaneously say, listen, it's easy to have prejudices when you also experience oppression, and so Static uses that to take on this guy who he thought that he agreed with, who was basically a terrorist, and that was really Static at its best, because it was a story about Virgil, who happened to be Static, and using his experiences as Virgil to augment his crime-fighting career. And not that every issue has to be like that, and it wasn't really like a very special issue. I mean, they did this all the time. They did it in the cartoon. The cartoon dealt with poverty. The cartoon dealt with racism. The cartoon dealt with gun violence. And so it's not as though you need a quote unquote special topic. But if you want to introduce people to the character thematically, it is about Virgil Hawkins dealing with real world issues. He also happens to be a superhero. That really is, in my opinion, the core of the character. And I wish that was understood by DC at the time, because it's really, really ignored in this run.
Yeah, and that's kind of just depressing that it is ignored. All right, so 0 to 5, what would you rate this?
Do you guys do 0.5s?
Yes.
Yeah, I give it a 2.5 because it really, I remember this being just Slapshot, and it kind of is. I wasn't as upset when I reread this, probably because I was expecting worse, but also knowing the behind the scenes, like railroading of John Rossum, it could have been worse. So it's not really good, but I think a 2.5 I think is fair, because honestly, the New 52 had way worse titles that I read that I hated. And this one I didn't hate, but it was just also man, you can't say that the heart is in this one.
There is zero heart in this one at all. Like I said before, for me, and I think it's more because all of the information of what happened is kind of clouding my judgment, and I admit that, I got to give it somewhere between a 1.5 and a 2. Because looking back through it, like I said, the first 6 issues, I don't like the art. The writing is so... It's not even high school. I would have liked this better if it was Static. And please forgive me for saying this, but if it was Static as Sean Patrick Thomas and not another teen movie where he's just the token black guy, I think that would have been a better direction than what this is. I don't know, man. I don't know. Talk me out of it, please. Talk me out of it, because it's just one of those things where it just didn't hit home with me.
I mean, I even if it's a mediocre story, I would rather have Static, the hero of his own book, than just be a token black guy, which I was afraid he was going to become in the Titans book. But I don't know. It's just, it's confusing and it's misbegotten, but like it wasn't. It could have been racist and it wasn't. It was just it was just kind of boring more than anything else. I didn't think it was like contemptible, and the New 52 super had contempt, like just done right, hateful books that they could have turned this into at any moment. So it's probably a blessing in disguise that it ended when it did. But I will say that because Milestone is returning, having seen the sort of reimagining of Static, I'm interested to see, because I know that the writer and artist of that series is a gigantic Static fan. He's been posting all over Twitter about how excited he's to do it and all this artwork and stuff. So I know that however that series may turn out, it may be good, maybe bad, but I will know that at least they're going to try.
Wait, there's going to be a new Static series coming?
Yeah, because Milestone is coming back.
Right. Okay,
yeah, and they're relaunching Static, and they're retelling the story at this. He doesn't get his. The Big Bane is not at a gang war thing. It's at a protest. It's still very much like a modern reimagining that's done with both the animated series and the comic book history. In its hindsight, because I've seen images of him in the Milestone costume, I've seen images of him in the WB costume and stuff. So I'm interested to see where it goes, because it definitely looks like it's done from fans.
Very cool. And later this year, folks, when are we doing that? Later this year, we will be covering Static Rebirth of the Cool, and I almost want to add it, because that's only 4 issues. If the art wasn't already done for it, I almost want to add Trial by Fire to that, because I'm looking at the Trial by Fire trade here on Comixology, and I'm like, ooh, written by Dwayne McDuffie with Robert L. Washington III and John Paul Leon, and I'm like,
that's the first 4 issues of the whole series.
Yep. Yeah. Very, very cool. Yeah. I kind of want to do some more Static to see how other people write him better. Sorry, it just is one of those things where it didn't feel like a genuine story.
Well, I mean, the New 52 was really, really bad. So that was kind of like the curse of it anyway.
Yeah, there's only 2 exceptions I put to the New 52: Batgirl and Nightwing.
See, I hated Batgirl more than life itself. Batgirl and Red Hood and the Outlaws really pissed me off. But there was also Catwoman. There was also various other books. I was not in a good mood in 2011.
Batgirl by Gail Simone I thought was really good. When they switched it over to not Gail Simone, I wasn't happy with it. But her 5-volume run I thought was fairly good, fairly well done. And Kyle Higgins' Nightwing that was
solid. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
I like Nightwing. I like Batman and Robin. Batman was pretty good, but I really, really, really did not like a lot of other things. And part of that is because the continuity was so aggressively messed with. But part of it was I just thought it was a very mean-spirited era for the DC Comics. I mean, that Justice League was some of the most cynical writing I remember reading at the time. And I'm not gonna get into the Batgirl stuff, but Red Hood and the Outlaws and Catwoman, it was all it was very, very it reminded me of the worst of the 90s Image wannabe kind of stuff. But that was in the past. That was 10 years ago. There's no need for me to dwell on it.
It's hard to believe that the New 52 was 10 years ago. Oh my god.
It feels like 30.
Yeah, it kind of does, because there's been so much that's happened since then. All right, where can the people find you online, sir?
Well, thank you very much for having me back on again.
This has been fun, even though I've been a Debbie Downer on the whole thing.
it's not often I talk about static on podcasts. If you can't get enough of me, you can find me at my own podcast, Questions We Don't Have Answers, at kingdomwesters.com. I do that with my pal Harrison Chute. You can find me on Twitter at DonoDMG1. I am also a content contributor to both the Batman Universe and DC Infinite. And yeah, no, I write editorials, I write reviews, and I do a pretty wacky podcast called Questions We Don't Have Answers. But once again, thank you for bringing me back on.
Absolutely, man. This has been fun. Like I said last time, ever since I listened to you for 5 hours talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I had heard you and other things that you had done, and I'm like, yeah, I need to talk to that guy.
Oh no, I'm not listening in a while. I wonder how I come off in that.
I don't remember. It's been almost a year since I listened to it, so I am at TFG and Mike on Twitter. You can hear all the other contact info in the outro. Coming up next here in the month of June, we have episodes 414 through 417. 414, I had to move some things around because Steve Megatron was not ready to talk about or read our... every once in a while, people will submit their stuff to us and say, hey, would you cover this on the podcast? We will, just as long as you know that I have a predetermined schedule that's usually scheduled a year in advance. Well, Steve didn't have time at the time to do it, so I had to move Contraband around, but it is still going to be covered. In its place is going to be Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Nice.
So the Boom Studios, IDW, Mighty Morphin, TMNT crossover trade. And then my buddy Jesse Raz is joining me for Shattered Grid and Beyond the Grid. Oh, Beyond the Grid. How do you have something as epic as Shattered Grid and then you follow it up with a broken universe story? Anyway, and then at the end of the month, Steve Megatron will be back in episode 417 when we talk about Transformers Beast Wars number 4 and 5 from IDW Publishing. That's what's coming up here inside the Pull Bag. Make your great escape into comics, and we will catch you next time.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pull Bag, the GCRN's first comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate and leave a review for the show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Become a fan of us on Facebook, facebook.com/thepullbag. Send us an email, feedback at geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepullbag and at geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.